Hi, I'm Eliel, and today I'm going to be speaking about smartphones. As you guys can see, smartphones have become very popular in this time, and according to Pew Research Center, 2/3 of Americans own a smartphone, and 19% of those Americans rely on these smartphones for online services, information, or just staying connected with others. And Dr. Joseph Mercola, an osteopathic physician, states that 4 in 10 U.S. homes have gotten rid of their home phones. So this means that they rely basically more on their cell phones than home phones. So as you guys can see, cell phones, or smartphones particularly, have become a great tool for us in this time. And I'm here to tell you guys that smartphones have a significant negative effect on human health. And the reason behind this is that the radio frequency radiation emitted by cell phones increase the risk for brain tumors and or cancer. The high energy visible light emitted by these cell phones cause long-term eyesight damage, and they just cause sleeping problems. Alright, so to further discuss my first point, I will start off by defining what radio frequency radiation is. It is a non-ionizing, low-frequency electromagnetic radiation, which is emitted by devices such as cell phones, televisions, and radio transmissions. There have been numerous studies that show an association between the cell phone use and the development of brain tumors. A study showed that 40% increased risk of brain cancer from 1,640 or more hours of cell phone use, and the radiation given off by cell phones have a similar effect. It's like an analogy between the microwave radiation and cell phone radiation. Just like microwaves use radiation to heat up food, the cell phone radiation heats up human tissue inside the brain while talking on the phone. This radiation has been shown to affect the brain activity. It shows there's studies that show that metabolic activity near the phone's antenna, but not only that, the Clinical Neurophysiology Journal stated that radiation from LTE 4G technology, which is what most smartphones use now, affects not only the side where you use the phone, but on the other side of it as well. So basically, it's not limited to one side of the brain, it affects the whole brain. And this radiation not only affects adults who are the owners of the phones. They also affect the children of these adults. Children have twice as much risk of adverse health against the radiation. And Dr. Deborah Davis, founder of Environmental Health Trust, states that children's brains are more vulnerable to this type of radiation because their brain is composed of more liquid type substances, and so their brain is more likely to absorb that radiation and further affect them. And I will now move on to my second point, which is that the high energy visible light emitted by cell phones cause long-term eyesight damage. The high energy visible light is the portion of the visible light spectrum that comprises light in the shortest wavelengths, and it has highest potential to affect the human tissue. An optician, Andy Hepworth, believes that blue violet light that is given off by these devices is potentially hazardous and toxic to the back of our eyes, mainly the retina. And it also has the potential to put us at greater risk for macular degeneration, which is basically the deterioration of the macula, which is located in the retina, that is responsible for focusing, for allowing us to focus our central vision. Proximity itself also plays a factor in this point, because cell phones are used at a low proximity. Blurred vision is a symptom of eye strain, which often clears up, which is a temporary effect. But because you use cell phones so often, the effect may become permanent due to the constant eye strain. I will now move on to my third point, which is cell phone leads to sleeping problems. So as I said before, cell phones emit radio frequency radiation, and this affects the brain, but it also affects the way people sleep. A study in 2008 funded by the major mobile phone makers themselves showed that people exposed to this radiation at night were more likely took longer time to fall asleep, and were at deep sleep a shorter amount of time than those who weren't exposed to radiation. Smartphones emit bright blue light, so you can see them at the sunniest times of day, and Harvard Medical School scientists have found that this light suppresses a hormone called melatonin, which is supposed to help you with sleep timing and circadian rhythms. Not only does the radiation and the light affect the way you sleep, but just the temptation of having to respond to a message, or like going online, checking videos, or stuff like that. That according to the Huffington Post, a quarter of young people, like teenagers, college students, feel like they must stay connected with their phones. They want to stay connected at all times. So to conclude this, the radiation emitted by cell phones increases the risk of brain activities. The high energy visible light emitted by cell phones cause long-term eyesight damage, and the cell phone use at night leads to sleeping problems. And this is why the use of smartphone negatively affects the human health. Thank you.
All right, organizational stuff is really solid here. You've got a good, clear proposition. I like the statistical information that you use in the attention device. I think that works well to show us why we have to listen to this issue. The nature of the controversy, I think, could be developed a little bit more, but there's a good preview of what the supporting structure is going to be. As you get to the individual points, you signpost them pretty clearly. On the first point, there's a couple of references to studies, but there's not a specific citation of a specific study. There's some testimony that comes up on that point that I thought was fine. You did pretty well when it comes to evidence, citing testimony and authorities on a number of spots. There's, like I said, statistical information that's presented in a couple places. It gets cited in terms of sourcing, I think 2 out of the 3 times that I noticed. But there are some times when I'm getting something that sounds like factual data or even quoted material that is not being cited. And like I said, the generic studies say is not very useful, especially if somebody's going to respond to it. And I don't, the refutation speaker is going to have to figure out, well, what studies is he talking about? Maybe they're in the bibliography. It's one of those things that, though, ought to be in the oral presentation. I thought that you did a pretty good job with the generalizations. The second and the third one, I think, are a little bit stronger. The first one could use a little bit more information. There are explanations on the second one. The nice analogy, I guess, the cooking the brain, I suppose, is the explanation that we get there. The proof on it, I think, is a little bit thin. That's one of those places where I think we could use some statistical information to support your point. It's 7 minutes and 38 seconds, so it's a little bit long. And you need to look at us a little more often to build some credibility, but otherwise it was a good job. Thank you.